Morning everyone. It's an interesting time on a Friday morning, rare day off, and I'm about to go on to two very early starts for a business that only normally operates 9-5. I've got to be at my work the next 2 days at like 5:30 in the morning for system testing, which is always interesting to say the least. So what am I doing on my precious day off? Well, the Baleno's got to go back into the dealership again. The left rear suspension coil had been making a lot of weird noise. Been a lot of creaking, almost like, well, I mean, it can't, the spring can't have snapped. It's technically possible could have, but I'm sure I'd have felt something quite extreme if it had. Now, for a while, you could, if you press down on the back of the car, you could hear you could imitate the noise that you could hear when you're doing about 20-30 miles an hour. Now that noise is then annoyingly stopped, but it's still going to go in anyway for a check, because I'm not willing to chance for something potentially being wrong. So back to John Banks Suzuki. They've been very good in the time I've been dealing with them. As good as Stoneacre? I'm not sure, to be honest, because I dealt with Stoneacre in sales and service. I've only dealt with John Banks in service, but in terms of servicing, I'd say so far John Banks have probably got the edge. But the girls at Stoneacre Mills were very nice to talk to. As was I can't remember the gentleman's name, but there was also a guy there that put my cars in a couple of times as well. So we're going to empty the car out. I've got a courtesy car because I've got or should be having a courtesy car, because I'm got some important phone calls I'm waiting on this morning that I don't want to do in earshot of the dealership. So hopefully it's not a case of I have the car 45 minutes and be like, yeah, your car's sorted. But depending on what car I get, maybe we'll do a quick review, especially if it's one of the hybrid Swifts. We'll see what we can do. But better get my car emptied, because COVID regulations and all that. And also because I need to have a look at a problem on the above the rear view mirror. I've got a couple of vanity lights that you just press in and turn on. Most cars have them, or something thereof. But they work intermittently. And the other day I'd come home, switched the car off, took the key out of the ignition, and one of the lights turned on. So God knows how long that had been in the on position for, which sort of explains why sometimes my car struggles to start. I know one thing that I wish Suzuki could solve. Why the car is always covered in bird shit. Pretty much right under where I have to park my car. So let's get cracking. Now you might ask, how am I so sure it'll be a Swift? Because they've got a lot of other cars in their lineup. Heck, they could even have a used Baleno on offer. And yes, it's possible. I could be given an A-Cross, could be given a Swift, could be given a Swace, could be given the S-Cross or a Vitara. But realistically, as much as I prefer anything but the Swift, and I would love it as an opportunity to try out a Swace, realistically, they won't give a car that expensive for a courtesy car. Not unless they think they can get a sale out of it, or if they're just low on courtesy cars. So, I'll have to get on with it, I think. God. So tired. I've not slept very well all week, and the next 2 days are going to be even longer, and I keep waking up in all sorts of pain and agony with my legs and knees and joints. But what can you do? Anyway, let's get off to Suzuki and see what the day brings in terms of cars. So here we have today's ride. Swift Hybrid. Just come back from the dealers. It's still can't get used to the shape Swift. It's very awkward looking in many ways. That was the design direction Suzuki went, so that's what we have to live with. So on just driving it back from the dealers, I thought it would be a little better to drive. The steering's a bit indirect, the clutch is vague, and feels geared too short. A bit like the same problem my own Swift had. It felt geared a little too short. However, because it's hybrid, it'll be to do with working with the electric motor, and to do with getting the best miles per gallon out of the car. I think I've worked out a little more how to charge the hybrid as you go. So what I think you have to do, at least so far at least, you have to just lift and coast where you can to let the battery just top up. It's not... the seat's too narrow for me. Now, that's not a criticism of Suzuki, it's just, unfortunately, I'm a far wider frame person than most. And that's just my own doing. My sister's got one of these, and I've never actually driven her one, but she's got one of the old turbo ones before they went back to hybrid. So I'm just trying to open up the bonnet so we can have a looky and see what we've got going on under here. So Suzuki are back on naturally aspirated, so it's a 4-pot in there rather than the 3-cylinder turbo that I've got and my sister's got. Now I appreciate that what I'm talking about, it doesn't feel as nice to drive. Obviously a lot of it is to do with my own personal preference, and I've obviously very well dialed in with the Baleno now. I can't personally see where the electric motor is. I wonder if it's at the back. But that's... I mean, there's space to go bigger in there if they wanted. So I think if I remember rightly, it's 1200cc 4-cylinder, and obviously the 3 cylinders were 1 litre with the turbos on them. It's the engine I had when I had it in my Swift, don't get me wrong, it loved to be revved before they put an electric motor on it. It makes a unusual noise, and I'll see if I can grab the action camera, and you can come see what I mean. In the Swift, I just started getting in before I realised I needed the film. As we get in, okay size, got these weird semi-hidden doors here. It's okay all round in general. Not a badly proportioned vehicle. Could be better, could be worse. But if you wanted something slightly different, you'd buy something slightly different. But you do get the legendary Suzuki build quality and reliability. Now this car has a neutral switch to start it up. Have a very weirdly shaped steering wheel, which I can't quite get used to. That on there at the moment is I've set it to tell me when I'm charging the battery or not. So I've kept it about 3 bars since I got it. Equipment's okay, let me just turn it on. Oh crap, I think the other camera's just stopped recording, hang on. So, where was I before the other camera switched off? So yeah, that's currently where the electric motor is charged. So when you're putting power down, there's an arrow pointing that way indicating you're putting power from the battery into the wheels. And when you're lifting and coasting, there's an arrow pointing that way. That's that indicates you're putting money. Well, you are technically putting money, I guess, but you're putting electricity back into the battery. So like I say, it's not the greatest of interiors. We've got this annoying touch screen. Not as in that the Suzuki system is bad, but because obviously the cars are not the most expensive, it's not always the most responsive. At least the Baleno one is not the most responsive. We've got some nice chunky controls down here, which I prefer the chunky controls. I don't know about anyone else, because I know then what I'm touching. If I can't spare 2 seconds to look and turn on, say for instance, the aircon, it's like that is the button, right? So, or if you need to put air recycle on, it's a nice chunky dial. Chunky slider. Yeah, it's it'll be interesting to see what it's like. I'm going to take it for a quick spin around a couple of the roads that I took the Baleno on the other day. The only other thing I don't think I could get used to on a Swift. On the Baleno, the reverse, still got the reversing camera. Reverse is still not very good in this. Wouldn't go in when I was trying to turn the car around. But reverse in the Baleno is a lot higher up. This is right above the number plate, which is really low down, which is hard to get used to. I'm sure I get used to it in time, but I just prefer, on principle, where the Baleno's reversing camera is, because it's a bit higher up and easier to work with. And also, it seems to be suffering from the same thing that my other Suzukis are suffering from. I just can't get that mirror right. But let's go for a quick blast, shall we? Damn annoying thing is because this action camera doesn't have any batteries anymore. It has to be all done the wire every time the car stalls. Every time the car stalls, the camera cuts out and the recording is more than likely lost. So, where was I? I was saying about what it's like. The steering wheel's an interesting shape to get used to. It's sort of an Audi stroke Lamborghini style wheel now. Not my favourite shape, but I'm getting used to it. The steering itself is very light, very vague. Doesn't mean that's a bad thing as such, because it makes it very easy to drive if you're not someone who enjoys to drive. The gearing is very short. You'll probably see, compared to in the Baleno, I've already changed gear quite a few times. I'm just lifting and coasting just to get the battery to top back up. So let me just try and put the power down. It's a little hesitant compared to a turbo, but it's no different to, I guess, to a turbo having to spin up. There's not as much road noise in this in standard form compared to my Baleno. I'm already in 15/5 because that's what it feels like it needs to do. In actual fact, going down the dual carriageway to the dealership at 70 mile course, so as they're coming back from there at 70 miles an hour, it felt 70 miles an hour felt wrong. It felt like the car was revving too hard. And that's what, got anyone around? No, there's no one around me, so I do a little bit of lift and coast now, top the battery back up. So already I was at 60, we're already at 55. And now we're at 50. And we're still dropping. Still dropping. We're now at 40, and I've done, that was not very far, and I've topped the battery up. Actually, I've nearly topped it up to full. It's got stop start on, which it's hard getting used to it. Not my favourite feature, but I've not had a car with it on. So I'm going to put an asterisk next to that, because it's not, because it's not something I've ever had to get used to before. It's not necessarily something I can say whether I do or don't properly like. So we're just going to head towards excuse me, we're going to head towards Barrow down some of these twisty roads I did the smiling video on, because I like these, and this will be a good test to see whether how much this car likes doing stuff, whether it's still got some of the old Swift magic in there. So we're at 16, fling it in. Well, actually wasn't really much of a place to fling it. Okay, so here we are, lift and coast, fling it in. Okay, so it takes it. Right, I'm going to need to do a tiny bit of brake for this corner. It's a shame I haven't got my dash cam, it's in the Baleno, and I didn't take that out when I gave it to them. Okay, maybe didn't push the car hard enough for that. Oh, bird hovering. No, as in it's a bird of prey. Right, I'm not getting quite the same happiness out of this as I was in the Baleno, but it's still fun. Not quite as good as it could be. Must be the electronic power steering in it or something like that, because it's just not quite what I would like. It's a bit better over the bumps than the Baleno ever was, excuse me. The seat's getting a little bit more comfortable, still too narrow for my frame, still too narrow.
trying to slow down. You have to be at the speed limit when you get there. So we're just coming into Cavenham. Nice little village from what I've seen. Then we're back doing 30. Now again, this Baleno, I'm so used to saying Baleno, this Swift, we're back to a problem I used to have in my first Swift. 30 and third sometimes feels too much for it. The 30 and fourth doesn't quite seem right. So this is 30 and fourth, that's about 1500 RPMs ticking over at. Just check the trip computer to see if that's, no, that's not going to do it, so we'll check that. It's off, some fuel, average fuel economy, so it's currently running 51 miles per gallon, which is not brilliant, not bad, not brilliant. Because I know a car like this with this sort of gear on should be able to do so much more than that. But then again, the electrics inside are heavy. They're heavy. It's an extra weight. If it was just a standard Swift with the engine in that they've put on, I'm going to try and explore a different road, I think. Try going this way. We'll see what we get. Because I can always turn around. Right. That was not a very good steering I did at all. That was me, not the car. So we're just coming down a tiny little single track road. I don't think you can hear that on there. There's a turbo spooling out. Not turbo, the electric motor. It's weird to hear it at speed. It sounds bad. As in when you're doing it, it doesn't sound like the car's enjoying being put to speed. It makes it a weird whine. But then again, I suppose you could argue, well, a turbo's not exactly fantastic to hear either. Which it may not be, depending on your preference. I need to find someone to turn around because this is a courtesy. I don't really want to do too far down a road I don't know. Right, let's turn it around. Feel the suspension do whatever it's going to do. Oh, bumpy. Quick check, quick check. Hear it? It's not a turbo, that's the electric motor whining along. Now it does eventually kick on and make it go nice. Although I topped the battery up to being nearly full, and just doing that's taking it all the way down to nearly empty. Not quite sure what the software inside is doing. It's a car, in many ways it's a car I really want to like, because I've always liked Swifts. When I was younger I always wanted a Swift as my first car, but obviously back then I think they were shaped like a wedge of cheese, but the more modern one, when Top Gear did the Swift hockey, remember that when they did the Top Gear Olympics years ago? That's my phone going absolutely mad. It's like, really couldn't be at a worse time. Really having to remember to put more gas on to get the car moving. So, back to 30, hit the 30, out the way you silly pigeon. Right. It's not, let's say, it's not the most fantastic of Suzukis, and I imagine one of these trimmed in with a Swift Sport motor and Swift Sport setup, coupled to an electric motor would actually be quite a fun little thing to fling around. It's just I don't know. I really want to love this car a bit more than I do. And please, I was offered last year an option to buy a Swift, get rid of the negative equity that the Baleno had. Could have got a Swift Hybrid SZT and start my finance all over again, and they would have written the negative equity would have been taken out because of the offer they had on the Swift at the time. Let's drop down. something it can do. Interestingly, it's a smoother ride because I can't hear the suction mounting you might potentially see in the shadows. I can't hear that rattling unless I fixed it on better than I have done before. But it's this little car could do so much more. And like I say, don't get me wrong, when you buy one, I think it'll be a good little runaround. For me, nah, I don't think it is for me. I don't think it is for me at all. The hybrid though, it's been interesting getting more used to the hybrid because I only drove it once from the dealership, quick blast down the A14 and into Bury St Edmunds town centre when I was covering at the Bury St Edmunds branch one morning, or one day should I say. And it was alright. Little John, I was struggling to get used to it, as I recall, if I recall what I put on the Velocity Kinetics page correctly. I was struggling to get used to it. I'm just doing a little bit because I've got no one around me. I'm just doing a little bit of pump and go just to make sure the battery is by pump and go. I mean, as in just build speed up and then lift off, speed up and lift off, just to charge the battery as much as I can. Because I think that is just something, it blows my mind how much you need to do that, at least on Suzuki's setup. I imagine the setup's very similar to all the other self-charging hybrids. It really does require, I did touch on it in a video we did probably tail end of last year. It really does require a massive change in thought, and I've been lucky because I've had the roads to myself, or the country roads, so I've had them pretty much to myself anyway. But it's it requires a global change in thought as to how to drive these vehicles, and this is to help everyone else as well get the maximum out of them. I don't care particularly what people drive. I don't care what people drive at all. They could all be driving Toyota Priuses for all I care. But everyone's got to have the change in mentality, I think. Everyone needs to change their thought process around how they drive. Like for instance, whilst this is a 30, because it's quiet, I'm building up the speed to 30 and then letting the engine braking take over and letting the battery top up, because I think that's just the way we're going to have to do it. So that's the end of this little review of a Suzuki Swift Hybrid. I like to do these sort of videos, and I wish I could do them more often. So look after yourselves, drive safe, and we will see you in another video at some point shortly.